So 3 weeks ago, Kayla, a friend of mine, just contacted me to mention a friend of hers called Ryan, who had an experience to do with bilocation and perhaps more of teleportation. And she never mentioned that to me, before. And I was very intrigued by the story, so I decided to contact Ryan, and we met at the cafe and we discussed our, both of our experiences. And I was able to provide some information to him related to his own experiences. So I would like to discuss the experiments that occurred since he was a child, and moving on to his most recent experience that happened maybe like about 3 weeks ago. Yeah. So Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you.
So Ryan, tell me about your, if you don't mind starting with your childhood, like how, where you grew up, and what the kind of dreams that you had. If you can just go back to that story.
I grew up down in Victoria, like the Machosen area. Then I lived in Langford for a while. It started like when I was really small. I would have terrible nightmares. Started with nightmares, and I guess just still to this day, like as like a little boy, having these vivid memories of just being lost, like coming to and having no idea where I am, and then just being terrified of like the night and going to sleep. And then it wasn't I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 years ago that I really started discussing it with my mom, and she told me that I would come down to her and tell her that the bears were trying to get me, the hairy bears were trying to get me, and that was constant all the time. And
do you remember the face of the bears and how they look like, or is that still kind of blurry?
I don't really remember that so much. And I didn't even really remember that even I said that, but it was my mom that brought it up to me. She said I had a lot of trouble as a kid, going to sleep and that kind of stuff. So
how old were you roughly, at that time when you had those dreams? Like, were you 6, 7 years old?
Yeah, I'd say, well, it would have been between grade 1 and grade 5.
Okay.
So somewhere in there.
Right. So quite over a few years, you had those kind of recurring dreams or nightmares.
That's right.
Right.
And I mean, I guess it never really went away.
Okay.
Like, I've always, still to this day, have problems sleeping. And
So when we met, obviously you didn't know me and I didn't know you.
No.
I just knew your first name.
That's right.
I didn't know what kind of jobs you were doing, and you're an electrician by trade, right?
That's right, yeah.
And when we met, this is what I do. I was able to see some of the experiences you had by transporting my consciousness into yours.
Okay.
Because when we are communicating and you are open to it, you kind of open up a gateway for me to access. And that's what I do with most of my experiences. Most of the stuff I do is through remote viewing, and it kind of opens up a channel. And in my case, I can see events through the eyes of people who either died or are fully alive, or for sometimes the events that will occur in the future.
Okay.
And I can see what they see, but I can also see through their dreams, or sometimes just by what they think.
Right.
So we have a very hard time to perceive the idea of having a thought as being physical or material, but in the universe, in fact, the thoughts processes are physical, and could end up into a different reality that we don't have or experience in this reality, in the 3D realm. So in your case, I told you that those bears were Sasquatches.
Yeah.
And you mentioned to me that you were interested in the Sasquatch and were trying to almost like discover about them. So can you tell me more about what you've experienced and how these interests got triggered?
Well, I guess, as you guys may not know, we live in one of the most active Sasquatch regions in the world that I've learned. And just, I think more, I have really had no experiences with them, but for some reason I've had this overwhelming fascination with them. And I just like researched and tried to learn as much as I could. That being said, I've ran into a few people that have actually had some experiences.
I have as well.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
And so, the more I looked into it, I kind of like would maybe ask people about it a little bit, like hunters and people that were out in the woods a lot. And yeah, it was surprising how many people have, or heard like some screams or heard, yeah, so that's mainly like as far as I've taken the Sasquatch. But
So how were you when you started being interested in the Sasquatch stories?
well, it was only like about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay, so fairly recent.
Yeah, that I really got interested in
Right.
researching them.
So you are 37 years old,
Yeah.
and you started having those interests at 32 years old, roughly.
Yeah.
So you basically, which is the exact time frame when people starting experiencing basically, very cosmic experiences, when they start awakening to different realms and this sort of thing. So it's kind of timely. I was 35 years old when I had my own experiences. So it's in that range of like 30 to 35 and so on. So it kind of fits the profile of what you've been experiencing. But the fact that I didn't know that you were interested in Sasquatches, and I was able to, see your Sasquatch experiences as a child, and that right away I knew that the bears were not bears, but they were Sasquatches, and that they were interested and intrigued into your story because for whatever reason they were attracted to your energy that they were very curious about. And I was actually quite surprised by this because I never experienced an actual Sasquatch, or never really got interested into the Sasquatch story in detail. But as I was seeing this through their eyes.
Yeah.
So when you have a remote viewing session, you not only see certain things or situations, but you also feel what they feel. And that experience to me was very extraordinary because I could sense their energy, but also how respectful I would have been of them if I had to encounter them, because they're not just like beasts. They are definitely like more extraterrestrials in a way. They have a very different energy than human beings for sure.
Yeah.
I also sense that they could do what you can do today. And that's the reason why they were very interested and intrigued into your energy. Because I think somehow they can also cloak themselves. Like that's the reason why most people say I've never seen one. It's not because they don't exist, but they can physically disappear in the wilderness, and they can make themselves disappear. And cloaking their own physical appearance into the forest, not just because they are hairy and sure they have fur on them and whatever, but what I'm saying is they can physically disappear in the eyes of someone. So in your case, let's move forward to what happened over 3 weeks ago. Can you describe the evening and what led to your experience?
Yeah. So me and a few buddies were at my friend's house playing Risk, and we were having a few drinks. I had about 6 beer, but Risk carries on till the wee hours of the morning. So we ran out of beer at midnight, and we played Risk till 5 a.m. And after that, we came back to my house, me and my friend, and he was going to stay over the night. And so at 5 a.m. we went to bed, and I went to sleep in my bed, and he went to sleep in my spare room. And he woke me up at 8 a.m. and I heard him say, I didn't go to sleep in this bed. And I opened my eyes, and I was sleeping in the exact spot that he went to sleep in. and he woke up in the exact spot that I went to sleep in.
Right. So your bedrooms are facing each other roughly. There's a bathroom in between.
That's right.
You were sleeping basically almost face to face, like you were like feet to feet,
Yeah.
right? In that sense. And it's funny that when you look at the bedrooms, your body would have been almost right in
Right
front
in
of the
line.
other, right? In
Yeah.
line with the other body, just based on where you sleep in bed and where you will have slept in the bed.
Yeah.
So there was an actual transfer that happened, that occurred.
Yeah.
Now you told me, and again, that was your first instinct to say that you thought that you were being abducted, and that you
Yeah.
were both being abducted. Your friend is also called Ryan, so you
Yeah.
share the same names. And
That's right.
jokingly, you said, "Well, maybe the Sasquatch came over and abducted us, and then traded places because we were both called Ryan, and they didn't know which bed we
couldn't
belonged to."
figure
Right?
it out. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, if you had that kind of experience, you will have had some more insights to do with the actual abduction itself, more recurring dreams or more nightmares, which
Okay.
didn't happen, right?
No.
At the same time, it's possible that you are completely, like your memory was completely wiped during the
Yeah.
experience. Once again, when we first met, right away, what I saw was not so much of an abduction per se, even if you probably had some experiences when you were younger,
Yeah.
to do with a Sasquatch. However, I could also feel that you had no implants, no physical or ethereal implants, like
Okay.
energetical implants in your body. So you were pretty clean in that sense. Like
Okay.
there was no, I mean, most alien abduction cases that I know of, for the genuine ones, who've been, checked by Dr. Roger Lear, who was physically removing implants from
Right.
people's bodies. I don't know if you
Okay.
know the story,
Okay.
but he was actually removing implants that were, in any parts of the bodies, but they were all different size and
Wow.
shapes, and they had specific composition that it was not a meteorite fragment. It was man-made, or it was designed to be
Okay.
that way. And they could look like a crystal, or it could look like a piece of metal or something, or even cartilage. But when you look under the microscopes, those
Yeah.
implants will be looking more like some technological advanced pieces of
Is it biological?
but it could be biological, it could be metallic,
Okay.
depending on what it is. But each abductee that Roger Lear dealt with also felt that they had this attachment to their implants, and that when they got them removed, they didn't like it.
Oh.
So they kind of served the purpose,
Okay.
right? In most cases, for the people I know and I'm interacting with, I've interviewed as well, have physical implants and are okay with them because it allows them to be, like, let's say, more psychic. They have more abilities. In your case, I didn't sense any of that, and I could sense those things.
Okay.
And what I find interesting is you were able to teleport, literally, and teleport a friend of yours at the same time.
That's what you think it was.
That's what I think it
Yeah.
was. And that's exactly why the Sasquatch were interested in your energy when you were younger. So that experience is very new to me. I'd never met people doing that. I'm very familiar with bilocation, when you can be appearing at two different places at once. Obviously, I know remote viewing, where you can transport your consciousness somewhere else.
Right.
So you can see different situations somewhere else. Like, that's using your third eye, but physically moving, from one place to another, that's like almost like time travel. So there's some kind of quantum physics understanding of that is really fascinating to me. And you have zero consciousness of this whatsoever. You don't know how to control it at this point.
No.
And I have the sense that eventually you will be able to control it. So tell me about the experience you had with the foil.
So this was even more recent. This was just a week ago, 2 weeks ago maybe. So I know, well, I guess I make a celery juice every morning, and this morning I emptied it into the garbage can, and the garbage can was virtually empty. So all the remains of the celery juice I threw in the garbage. This is about 9 a.m. and cleaned everything up, and I went out back to do some work in the backyard. And at about 11:30, I came in for lunch, and I went to throw something in the garbage can, and there's this box, like a aluminum foil empty box in the garbage can, and it filled up the whole garbage can. And I was like, I just couldn't believe where this came from. And so I phoned, like I asked a few people, like the close people that, and this was in my house under my sink.
Right.
Not like a garbage can outside. This was in my house under my sink. And so I phoned around a few people and just kind of, did you come over? Did you throw anything in my garbage can by any chance? And still to this day, nobody's come forward to claim it. Right. And like the fact that, so why would someone come over with an empty aluminum foil box? And I inspected the box too, and it was old. It was really old. There was even a dead spider inside of it.
Really?
Yeah. And the other thing is, I had my 2 big garbage cans sitting in my driveway.
Okay.
Right before you would have come inside the house. So
Right.
if you wanted to throw it in the garbage, you could have used either of those garbage cans.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm still at a loss to understand where this box of aluminum foil came. So in a 2.5 hour window, that box ended up in my garbage can. Mm-hmm. and like it was big, right?
So do you think that you made this box appear? I mentioned to you, you contacted me about this, thinking it was just like a small event. And again, I've asked you, do you think that you were able to transport that box into your can yourself by thinking about it, or unconsciously? These are called apports. Like
Okay.
in some events where you have spiritualism, people do some sessions with spirits and trying to call ghosts and these sort of things. They were able to transport objects from anywhere. Like they just appeared on the table, and they could be ancient objects, older objects. In your case, it's telling me that aluminum foil box was older and even had some spiders in it, or dead spiders.
Yeah.
It almost sound like it was coming from a different time. Even if it's not that ancient, it was still from somewhere else, and someone just maybe transport it over here. So my next question to you, based on that event, is: do you feel, since you've been moving in this house, how long have you been living here for?
About a year.
About a year.
Yeah.
Do you feel like kind of a sense like there's a different type of energy here?
Yeah, I did. When I first moved in, there was a lot of noises
Really?
in this house. Yeah.
Now, were they inside the house, or were they more like underground?
No, they were. I think they felt like they were inside the house. Mm-hmm. I'd have friends stay over and be just like, oh my God, I don't know how you stay here by yourself.
Really?
Yeah, because you'd hear knocks and cracks, and
Uh-huh.
and I just didn't really seem to bother me too much.
Is it an older home?
Yeah, very old.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm not sure. I think maybe like...
From the 20s maybe?
No, I think I was going to say the 30s maybe.
30s, okay. Yeah. So do you think like maybe someone died here, and then the experiences that you've encountered were more related to a poltergeist?
I'm not too sure. And, and maybe I'm just used to it now, but I don't seem to notice them anymore.
Right.
So maybe once I moved in, they were just, they wanted to leave, or I
Right.
don't know, make a bit of noise.
So I just wanted to mention that to you as well, because that's new information to you. You are living close to a place called Teleglobe, and there are some satellite dishes, and there were some military presence at one point as well, and there were both Canadian and US military on site. I'm actually working on a documentary related to this area, and you are 600 meters away from the location, the exact location, on a straight line, very close to Lake Cowichan, and you have experienced some weird activities related to energy. And I can tell you that from the people who lived on site, who I've been able to interview, said to me that they could see some lights coming out of the ground, and they could see and they could hear rumble underground. So there was some kind of weird activity going on the premises, and there are talks of portals, stargates. So
Wow.
these could potentially be related to your actual physical experiences in this house that may be triggered by some kind of vortex of energy that may be going through this area. And I also know a few other people who live close by. One person who basically was sleeping with an oxygen mask, and she's got sleep apnea, and she's in her 70s almost, or close to 70, and she basically has a mask removed from her face
Yeah.
every night at a specific time, and she can't physically remove it. It's all attached, on the back
Right,
of her
yeah.
head and everything else. And she questioned me and she asked me, I don't know who does it, but there's some kind of weird presence that does this, and it's monitored. So the mask or the oxygen masks is connected to a machine that can check, how much flow there is, and
Oh, so that's why they know what time it is.
yeah, exactly. So, and then she's very intrigued by this, and at one point she even asked her husband to stay up and to watch her, at that time, and he fell asleep before he could even watch. So there's something that pushed him to fall asleep, and he was not able to, check it out. And they kind of gave up on the idea of that experience, but they are living extremely close by to you. So I'm just curious to know how many other people who live nearby who have those kind of experiences that may be related to that location of Teleglobe.
Yeah. I'm not too sure about, I haven't really talked about this to anybody, or
But you mentioned that your friend Ryan lives close by.
he does. He lives closer to Yubo, about 5 minutes, about
Yeah.
6 minutes towards Yubo,
Right.
which is down the lake.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Teleglobe Center that we've documented potentially has an underground facility that reaches 12 kilometers underground.
Oh, yeah.
Right. That will lead towards Yubo. In fact, on the other side of the mountain, there will be some other satellite dishes and white domes that are not even showing on Google Maps or Google Earth, because they are being completely erased and photoshopped even to this day. So that's part of the next steps of my documentary, is trying to go over there and trying to film this area that no one knows about.
Oh, that's cool. He might be within that zone. He's because he's
Potentially.
about that 12 kilometers
Yep.
towards Yubo.
Exactly. So your friend got pretty spooked by this experience, obviously. Like he was, he woke up in a different bed. He realized he was not, he didn't fall asleep in that other bed, and
Yeah, like I can say, I've woken up in, like, I'll wake up on the couch sometimes. I'll wake up in lots of different places.
yeah, because you've been sleepwalking since you were a
And
child
so
as
that's
well, right?
that's what I equate it to, was
Right.
sleepwalking. But this was the first time that I really had like pretty concrete evidence, whereas two people at the same
Exactly.
time, I mean, it's kind of hard to brush that off.
Yeah, it's not like you both sleepwalked at the same time.
No,
Especially like in the corridor being so narrow,
That's
like you would
right.
probably have bumped into the walls trying to, get to the other room. And, I mean, it's very unlikely that two people around the same age would be sleepwalking around the same time in order
Yeah.
to switch trade places.
we would
in the
have
middle of
been
the night.
like, running into each other in the hallway.
Yeah, right.
So as far as that goes, and I guess I should say that, because I've been interested in extraterrestrial stuff, right? And I asked for a sign.
Okay.
I did ask for a sign about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago.
Right.
Like physically asked the universe to kind of show me a sign to make me, I guess, like keep my fascination going, like to, because I've never seen a UFO, I've never seen anything. So I finally said, and I believe in it, I said, give me something, give me a sign. And so I forgot that I had asked for that, and then these things are starting to happen now.
So how long do you think it was between the time you asked the question and having that teleportation experience?
Yeah, and it was only sitting down with you and speaking with you that I actually remembered that I asked for it. I would say I would say about 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was earlier this year. It might have been before Christmas, just before Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, basically just said, yeah, I want to have some proof, basically. And then, yeah.
So Ryan, you were also telling me about the Sasquatch afterwards, saying that you were interested in them, and I sensed that again from my intuition, I just thought I could see that you'll be able to go into a forest to heal, and that would be the best place for you to regenerate yourself and perhaps even to interact with the Sasquatch if you ever felt that you had to see them for sure.
Yeah.
And that the first thing I got from them was that you should not be going there with someone else who didn't have the experience, that you should be going there on your own to have that experience in the forest. And you mentioned that you had a friend who kind of saw the same thing or mentioned to you the same thing about the forest.
Yeah.
Can you describe that?
I was mentioned it to her. She's somewhat of a clairvoyant as well, and I mentioned to her my fascination with the Sasquatch, and I basically wanted to know why I had this fascination and she didn't really give me like the same kind of answer, but she did say to go into the woods, and she said you will have an experience with them if you go out into the woods. And I don't know if I've been ready to have that experience, so I haven't gone by myself yet. And she said if you go with somebody else, you won't have that experience.
Right, which is exactly what I said to you.
Yeah, that's right.
When we met at the cafe, and then you basically told me that you do not remember that conversation with that woman at the time. When I mentioned going to the forest and trying to regenerate yourself,
that's right.
Then you just recalled that.
Yeah.
So how long was that? Like when did you actually have this conversation with your friend?
It was the same time as it was the same time I went over there before Christmas. So it would have been about 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay, which is roughly around the same time that you asked for confirmation.
Well, that's what I was trying to recall there. It was the same sitting.
Okay.
Yeah, I was with them because I asked her. I said I need some proof. I need to see a UFO or something. She says you gotta ask for it.
Right.
So then I did. I actually, within my own thoughts and put it out there. And so that's when she said that. She said, if you want an experience with the Sasquatch, you have to go. And she said you'd have to go by yourself though.
So what is your intuition about the Sasquatch? Do you think they are extraterrestrials? Do you think they are evolved beasts, that are extremely smart, intelligent, from a previous generation of humankind perhaps, or humanoids? What is your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I've got a few theories, but I think they're they're really smart and really evolved, in my personal opinion. I think they're from a higher dimension.
Okay.
That was my initial thought, because as far as I understand the dimensions go, if you're from 5 or 6D, you can access everything below you, but nothing above you.
Right.
So if they were in a higher dimension, that's maybe how they've escaped being captured or right, because they can escape into a different dimension when they'd like.
And that's probably why they can cloak themselves too.
Possibly.
So disappear from our physical reality, and so it's a possibility.
And then there was the theory of like thousands and thousands of years ago, maybe it was a giant spacecraft and it crashed on Earth and they've been stuck here.
You know that the Cowichan Valley is quite well known by the First Nations to be vibrant with UFO sightings, and the Sasquatch, actually, especially in the area here, the First Nations knew about 3 different types of Sasquatch as part of their stories, and the Lake Cowichan region was the forbidden land from their tribes, that they were not able to establish themselves in the area because of the Sasquatch.
That's funny.
And some of them were not as good, if they encountered human beings, they would have attacked them. So they stayed away from them and respected them at the same time. And it's still the case to this day in the Cowichan Valley.
I know.
So
we have if any other town you go to has an established native reserve, here there's I think 2 houses, and there isn't really any natives that live here. And I always thought it was because of the earthquakes and the mountains around us, and that's why they didn't want to, but it almost makes more sense.
It's to do with the forbidden land.
Yeah.
And I heard this from First Nations people directly. The fact that they actually know and have names for them all, they have different races of Sasquatches who live in the area. So it's a pretty active location. The Cowichan tribes themselves are on Vancouver Island, and they remember their origin from 2 human beings or kind of godlike beings that descended from the sky, right, and landed on top of Mount Provo.
Okay.
And that was the belief of the First Nations for the Cowichan tribes, that was their direct descendants. They came from the sky and they created the Cowichan tribes. So they have these direct connections to higher beings, and the sightings in the Cowichan Valley also have been pretty, quite strong over the years. It's kind of a hub. There was a recent documentary conducted, done by, I think, or done through CBC, that was about Granger Taylor. And do you know the story of Granger Taylor? So he was an abductee, and he's a guy who basically vanished and never came back. And he wrote a will on his on the door of his parents, saying, "I'm going away on this interstellar travel, and you can keep my money." And then and he disappeared and never came back. But he basically had direct contact with the ETs himself, and he just lived in the Cowichan Valley.
Really?
There were some nurses as well that saw an actual craft at the Cowichan Hospital in the 1970s, and they basically came into the room, saw those lights going through underneath the door, thinking the patient was, kept his light on during the night. And as they walked in, both nurses walked in to realize that the light came from the outside window, and they saw this craft outside the window with that being inside. And they could see the being looking like a human being, but maybe slightly different. They couldn't really describe it very well. But the craft went away, and the light went away with it. But that was also a recorded story that happened right in the Cowichan Valley.
It's interesting.
By 2 nurses. And, again, you have a lot of sightings. I've seen orbs myself. I've seen lights. I've seen crafts. It's a very vibrant location. So it doesn't surprise me that you're having those kind of experiences in this area more so than Mississauga or Victoria. But Vancouver Island certainly is more of a vortex of energy that more and more people are awakening to their own gifts and other types of realities that are out there.
Once I moved up here kind of full time from Victoria, because I was living in Victoria before, that's, I think, kind of the same time that my interests kind of peaked on the Sasquatch.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For no reason, and I just couldn't stop researching it. Yeah,
it's interesting.
It was.
Yeah. Well, I would like to thank you, Ryan, for taking the opportunity and to share your story with us today. And I think it's very brave of you too, to be forthcoming with your story, because so many people will shy away from their own testimony for being afraid of the ridicule. I've gone through the same thing myself. But at the same time, if you stick to your story, you know that it's real. It's all about educating others, and probably your experience will awaken others in the process, because there are some trigger points that happen as well.
Something similar.
It's all about synchronicity, and whatever happens today, maybe helping other people to have, and also being more forthcoming with their own stories, because I'm always meeting new people who are from different backgrounds, like lawyers, cops, and these kind of people who have good credentials and are also willing to share the story. Your cat just came out of the door. He just teleported.
He just opened the door. That's pretty good.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ryan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers. yeah, hopefully there's more to add to this shortly.
Well, keep us updated.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you.